The next couple of months, just enjoying myself. I'd saved plenty of money. I spent a lot of time in the Sadler's Head pub in Shirley. Taught me another lesson here. Often bought many rounds of beer for so-called mates. When most of my money had run out, only one man bought me a beer, and only half at that. Yeah. It was getting towards Christmas time, so I needed a job. I started at Davenport's Beer at Home, loading the trailers. It was only to be a temporary job over Christmas period. I liked the job, and we got 2 pints of beer a day free. What I really liked was when you had finished loading, you could go home. So the quicker you worked, the sooner you went home, a bit like piecework. I stayed on for a couple of months. The pay was poor. Had to find something better. I got a job with Newey Landscapes in Shirley. Mr. Newey was the Justice of the Peace and served on Solihull Council. He was a kindly gentleman. And the job was very interesting. Did a lot of re-landscaping gardens, stone walls, grass cutting and tarmacking driveways, even tarmac tennis courts around Solihull. Most jobs were the homes of the very wealthy, learned how their half lived. The lads were old hands at it. The foreman came from Clee Hills, and he brought a jug of cider with him to work every day. His favourite saying was, "Let your eye be your guide," which I have never forgotten. Recall sitting round a coke fire, opening tins of soup with a penknife and cooking for our lunch breaks. The worst job we had to do was following a Land Rover with a trailer across a plot of land, picking up stones before seeding could take place the next day. Not sure what year it was when Mr. Newey retired and closed down the business. He found every man a job in the council before he shut down. Not many men like that. In the same yard as Newey's was a company called T.E. Fleetwood Roofing. At that time, my wages were 2 shillings an hour, 54 hours a week, for £5 4 shillings. Talking to the roofing lads who had told me about the job they did, said that their average wage was £15 a week and could be more as they worked in a piecework rate. Also, worked all over the country, which meant working away from home. This appealed to me, another way of travelling. Mr. Newey had a word with Mr. Fleetwood and I got a job with him. Before leaving Mr. Newey, I bought my first car from him, a 1948 Standard 8 convertible for £35, and a new future awaits. Work was hard in those days. It was all asbestos shooting. My job was to carry on my shoulder 10-foot long sheets up a ladder and tipping it over for my mate to catch. Few tools were needed. A saw, a brace, a bit, and a fiddlestick for fixing the up bolts. Not many of us cars in them days, so we carried our bags of tools on the butt of the train. Having the car was fun. Open top, petrol at the time was 4 shillings for a gallon, 9 pence a litre today. The main problem, I did not have a full driving licence, which led me to meeting up with Mickey Boucher, who I knew from the Boys Brigade. He was 5 years older than me, but we got on very well together. He had a full licence and worked for Coca-Cola, driving a delivery lorry. Used to go weekends with him to shows and carnivals, where he passed out the cokes. It was all great fun. Mike was a bit of a ladies' man, good at the chat up. Driving around town, we had advantages over the other lads having a car, especially me and the girls. You understand? Cannot remember how long they had the car. I must have driven it many times on my own with only L plates, naughty me. We started a job in Swindon. The chap I was working with only had a licence but no car of his own, so we took mine. Well, we just about got there. It kept misfiring all the way. Don't think there was a lot wrong, probably just the timing. I spotted a small Ford Thames 500 weight van in the garage for sale. Two-tone blue, my favourite colour. So I bought it. When not out of town working, Mick and I made good use of the van, mainly around town. One thing some folks did at that time was to stick large transfers of the car number across your windscreen, which we did. After serving in the Navy, Dad never interfered with what I did, but he did pull me up on this and said, why the hell put those large numbers on the car windscreen? It will make it easier for the police to recognise you. It was strange to hear this from him. Never said anything like that before. We often drove evening times. We liked driving in the dark. Ended up one weekend in Great Yarmouth, parked by the beach and slept in the back of the van. Mick met a girl there called Jean, who he was later to marry. We often hired a car to go further afield. Our favourite car was a Triumph Herald. One week went to Birmingham-on-Sea. Mick again met a girl called Anne from Walsall. I think he was taken by her. He borrowed my van a few times to go to Walsall to see her. I went a few times with him and met her family, nice folks. I failed the driving test twice. The comment made both times, looks like you do not do hand signals. If you was to do hand signals today, you'd lose your arm. One day Mick said, why don't you come to Walsall with me? And as a friend. So it was to be a blind date. Her name was Janice, and the rest is history. Mick told me one day, shortly afterwards, that he was leaving Shirley Town and off to Yarmouth. This was completely out of the blue, and I never saw from Mick or heard from him again for nearly 50 years. I was stuck now. Could not go to see Janice, having no full licence. I made the journey many times illegally. I had often wondered about Mick Boucher over the years, how he was, what he did. 48 years later, I searched the internet for a Mick Boucher living in Great Yarmouth. A Mick Boucher popped up with an address, which I recognised as the girl Jean he met all those years ago. I wrote to the address and received a phone call from him confirming that it was him. We met up in Birmingham a few times. He came to see us at our house, saw him 3 or 4 times after that. And then sadly he passed away 3 years later. So I'm really grateful that I made the efforts to find him. One night, driving along the Walsall Road with my left arm around Jan's shoulder, suddenly a policeman on a big motorbike came up by the side of us and flagged us down. Well, he did give us a telling off for my arm around Jan, rightly so. The number plate on the van was 563 SNO, and that night there was snow on the ground. Before leaving us, the policeman passed a comment of having an appropriate number plate for the night. I'm afraid I did not see the joke at the time, but he did not ask to see my licence, thank God. Really had to pass the test, which I finally passed on the 3rd attempt. At this time, I mated up at work with Albert Jones from Walsall. And most of the work we was doing was in the Black Country area. So to save me travelling from Shirley to work and then over to Walsall and back, Albert put me up a while at his house so I could travel to work together and I could be with Janice in the evening. She only lived round the corner. I then found digs in Glebe Street, Walsall. So I moved in there to save all the travelling. And I stayed there till Janice and I married. Jan's father and mother, Steve and Nancy, were steward and stewardess at the Pleck Working Men's Club in the Pleck, Walsall. They were to hold a party at the club on the 21st of January 1964 for John's sister Midge. That day I was working in Stratford and Avon. 2:30 in the afternoon, the fog came down and I decided to leave for home early to make sure I got to the party. Took me 9 hours to get there that night. Everywhere had come to a stop. Worst fog I'd ever seen that night. Work had taken me all over the country and I made a good living at it. But now it was not so fun anymore working out of town, not seeing Jan till weekends. In 1964 I bought my first new car, an Hillman Imp. Jan and I made good use of it. We travelled all around the south coast, staying maybe just one night and moving on. We joined the National Trust and visited many stately homes up and down the country. We did this for a long time. Jan and I had planned to marry, so we started looking for a house to buy. We picked one in Brown Hills. One of the main reasons was at that time it was run by a parish council and the rates were very low compared to most areas. We had been saving with the Walsall Mutual Building Society, putting money in every week ready for getting a mortgage. When I applied, filling in the forms, it came to a section where it said any debts, which I said yes, the car. The man threw down his pen and said, "Sorry, I can't give you a mortgage." I was furious with him, telling me I could not afford to pay the mortgage. I caused a bit of a scene, demanding all my money and savings out there and then. We were paying the car debt and saving more a week than the mortgage was going to be. Went to the estate agents and told them the story. They put me in touch with another building society, Bristol and West, and advised me, when getting to the question of the debt, to say no. You could have the mortgage granted today and go into debt the next week, so what? So we was granted a mortgage. We received the keys for the house in November '64 and planned to move in 27th of March '65, our wedding day. First thing we did was to meet our next door neighbours, Harold and Millie, and their two children, Alan and Lynn. We needed to do a lot of work on the house, and we went most nights after work to start alterations. We had already bought a bed for £32, so it was the first to decorate one bedroom. I thought that made sense. We ripped out the fire grates and fitted gas fires. Working one very cold night, Jan screamed out, "There's water coming out of the light switches and running down the stairs." A pipe had burst in the bathroom. All the power went off, could not see anything. Of course, did not know where the stop tap was to turn off the water. Harold next door came round, drove his car up, put his headlights through the front door for us to see, and we got the water turned off. This led to a wonderful relationship with our friends next door. 27th of March 1965, we got married at St John's Church, Walsall. Held the reception at the Pleg Club. Afterwards, we drove to the Spring Cottage pub in Walsall Wood. Never been there before, but why we went, I don't know. With a few friends, and then carried on to our house in Brown Hills. 3 days after getting married, I had to work in Liverpool, and I travelled it each day. There was no money or time for honeymoon. We did the kitchen and the back dining room next. And I hate painting, so replaced all the skirting boards in the house with Superior wood, so we'd never have to paint them ever again. Later, the same with all the door and alcotroves. Both of us had decent pay, so Jan worked at Decorate Paints in Walsall, which was very handy. She got trade prices on paint and wallpaper, even glass double glazing. After moving in slowly, went from room to room. Left the stairs with no carpet for quite a few years, till we had the money. We had learned not to buy anything on our purchase, after was experience of an earlier time, when I'd won some money on a ticket, and I put it towards a service twin tub washing machine. This taught us how much you end up paying for it, much, much more. 1965, work was drying up, not any work about anywhere. I had to get a job to pay the mortgage. I got a start at the Arboretum garage in Walsall, serving on the petrol pumps. It was 12 to midnight to 6 in the morning. This got us by. Also met some right characters. One regular character was Sir Armour Nichols, father of Sue Nichols, who stars in television, Coronation Street. And one night, a Rolls Royce pulled up at the regular pump and asked to be filled up. When the driver got out, it was film star Stanley Baker, and his passenger was Liz Fraser. They was great folks, and they was really nice. They left us £half a crown tip, which was quite good. Albert and I got a start with H&H Robinson Roofing, a company that had branches in Australia and South Africa. Had a good run with this outfit, but we needed a change. Found a company, Broadway Buildings in Kingsford, and worked for them for the next 14 years. Jan and I was settled with no debts and looking good. Then the interest rates suddenly started to rise, hitting the roof at 17%. Of course, mortgage rates kept rising. We opted to pay the extra. When the rates dropped, bit by bit, kept the same payments up. In the end, we was able to pay off our mortgage after about 12 years. It was like a millstone being lifted from around our necks. Thanks for watching.